So Nicotine posted a video in response to his circus-like stick-in experience this evening, and I was there briefly enough to yell at Nicotine. Yell. I mean, I was enjoying it, but I don't think he could hear me very well, or it was kind of, I don't know. I felt like I was shouting across a crowded room of wild animals barking at one another. Because yeah, well, it was a circus. That's or a freak show, however you want to put it. But basically, I had thoughts that I also wanted to share. I guess we can start with the subjectivity objectivity thing. Nick is responding to Gary, or in Men to Him, or actually that channel was just suspended. He was responding to Do Not God. He thinks that suffering matters objectively. Nicotine thinks that suffering is subjective and so can't matter objectively. But, I don't agree with Nicotine, at least in the extension of that idea that there is no good independent of the human mind or subject. Now, I don't therefore think that the good, the capital G good, is floating out there somewhere in space. When I say that the good is objective, I don't mean objective in this really quite modern understanding of objectivity as an expanse of empty space. That's it's a product of a heliocentric and more recently a Big Bang cosmology, where no longer is our earthly existence taken as most significant, but rather our cosmic context is taken as, and the cosmic context is understood to be that we are a pale blue dot, a mote of dust in a sunbeam, as Carl Sagan put it, and in that sense, very much an insignificant, drop of accidental majesty in the sea of chaotic, violent forces. So good obviously isn't out there. Out there is a pretty violent place. I mean, there's a simulation on YouTube somewhere. If you just search for star formation simulation, you'll find it. And it's a pretty violent. It almost looks like a Darwinian process where stars, they become these gravitational wells and they suck each other up and compete for hydrogen gas in order to eventually burst into flames and into nuclear flames because of fusion. I think there's a lot of violence out there and a lot of reason to say it's not good, but the kind of objective good that I'm talking about is one that it includes, it's a cliche it seems, but it includes and transcends both subjectivity and objectivity. So it's not a good out there any more than it is a good in here somewhere, whatever we think is inside rather than outside. I mean, we all understand the distinction there, but in reality, I don't need a theory of mind in order to know that there are other people. I'm immediately, intuitively struck by the presence of others. It's part of my objective encounter with reality. I don't have to reflect upon experience and produce or construct a theoretical model in order to interact with the world as if there were actually other people like myself. I know it immediately. It's a given. And I think you were implying this, Nicotine, but I think theory of mind is a bad choice if you want to avoid the connotation that somehow we have to think about and then, based on deduction or induction rather, assume that the thought that we've had about some universals, some abstract ideas, is true of every individual case. every particular incarnation of this idea that we have. Um, that may not always work out. And then, in terms of understanding how subjectivity and objectivity always go together, and that goodness is precisely the recognition of, it's the perception of the beauty of truth and the response to this perception. That's what goodness is. So, obviously, truth, beauty, and goodness are part of, you could almost call it a trinity of sorts. They're inextricably linked, so that there is no such thing as an objective truth independent of our subjective appreciation of that truth. We value it, and so it is true. Not that the value causes the truth. The truth is also it's in a relationship to values as a cause in its own right. So color, as I tried to mention a second ago, isn't related or caused by wavelengths, particular wavelengths of light. Color isn't merely the neural representation of the wavelengths of light. Our experience of colors emerges in more of a contextual way. It depends more on the lighting and the gestalt, the ecological context, in other words, than it does on some one-to-one relation between the neural code and a wavelength. There are various experiments that you can perform that'll prove this, where what is objectively, according to the wavelength of red, you experience it as green just because of the lighting which is displaying itself in. So color is a more emergent phenomenon. It takes place because of the relationship between organisms and their environments, or subjectivity and objectivity. Color is not merely a secondary characteristic of an objective, primary reality of, I don't know, what, some sort of atomistic objects. I've just made a few videos about idealism and materialism, and they ultimately depend upon one another. Even atomism. What is an atom? It's an entity of some sort, but to even conceive of the idea of an entity, you need ideas. And so atoms are quite literally ideas, but it's just a materialist says, well, reality is composed really of very simple ideas that just are stupid. They're ideas, and they're given that bare minimal sense of being an idea because they exist, they're atoms, they have their own being, they're uncuttable. They're given that bit of ideality and identity, but it's supposed that the human world, for instance, and especially what the humans project out into the cosmos as a heavenly world, that's all reducible to the playing out of the stupid interactions of these very teeny atoms. Whereas idealism says, no, actually, reality is made of ideas, yes, but they're not merely atoms. The atoms are made of, or examples of, some forms or ideas which exist in reality, but there are higher forms, some forms which materially are invisible. The form, I would say, which composes our own bodies is invisible. I'm not saying we're made of something other than matter. There's no soul floating around somewhere controlling the body, but rather the form of my body is invisible in the sense that what shapes me and grows me is not the matter of which I am made, but the process that it enacts and the structures that it continually produces. The matter flows through me, the form remains the same, not present in the matter, and so, in a way, invisible, though its effects are visible, namely my